Hi everyone, this is Jack from Maths Forge, and in today's lesson we're going to be plotting linear graphs of the form y is equal to mx plus c. So all straight lines have the equation y equals mx plus c, where m is your gradient and c is your y-intercept. So the way I like to plot these is by constructing a table for x and y coordinates. We're going to have three spaces available for input values, and that looks like this. So we're going to pick 0, 1 and 2 for our x values. You can choose whichever values you want, and in fact we can just do a quick check to see if they're going to work. Since our grid goes up to 5 and minus 5, we have to be mindful of the x values we choose. For x is 0, we're going to have 2 times 0, which is 0, plus 1, which is 1. That works. That can fit within the grid. For 1, we're going to have 2 times 1 plus 1, which is 2, plus 1, which is 3. That also works. And finally for 2, we're going to have 2 times 2, which is 4, plus 1, which is 5. So all of these x values actually give us y values that we can fit onto the grid. So for 0, it was 1. For 1, it was 3. And for 2, it was 5. These are now paired values that we're going to put as coordinates onto the grid. So the first paired value is going to be a coordinate of 0 and 1. Our second paired value is going to be a coordinate of 1 and 3. And our third paired values is going to be a coordinate of 2 and 5. Now, if we place these coordinates onto the grid, connect them with a straight line, we should be done. So for our first coordinate, it's going to be 0 on the x and 1 on the y. 0 on the x and 1 on the y, which is here. For our second one, it's going to be 1 on the x and 3 on the y. And for our final one, it's going to be 2 on the x and 5 on the y. We now have our three coordinates on here. We're going to connect them with a straight line from the start of the grid to the end of the grid. And that's going to look like this. And this is the straight line for the equation y is equal to 2x plus 1. If we check our answer, there it is. Now let's do a 2-star example. In the same way that we've done the 1-star example, we're going to construct a table for y is equal to minus 4x plus 2. So we're going to have our y and x values. Make sure you can input 3 values, so we're going to have 3 spaces available. And then we're going to put for x 0, since negative 4 times 0 is 0, plus 2 gives us a y value of 2. Let's try 1. 1 times negative 4 is negative 4, plus 2 is negative 2, so that also works. Remember, since our grid goes from 5 to minus 5, you want to have values that also range from 5 to minus 5. Now let's try 2. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Negative 8 plus 2 is negative 6. This isn't going to work. We don't actually have a negative 6 on our grid. So we're going to pick a different number. If we pick 3, it's also going to give us a number that falls off of this grid. Let's try a half. And the reason I'm picking a half is because we can input this in place of the x, and we're going to have a half times negative 4. And the half of 4, of course, is 2. So if we pick the value a half for x, we're going to have a half times negative 4, which is negative 2, and then plus 2, which is 0. So a half actually works. You can use fractions for your input values for x. So now that we have our paired coordinates, our first one is going to be 0 and 2. Our second one is going to be 1 and negative 2. And our third one is going to be a half and 0. So if we plot these coordinates now, the first one is 0 for the x and 2 for the y, so it's here. The next one is 1 for the x and negative 2 for the y, which is here. And the last one is a half for x, so it's here, and 0 for y, which means it's just going to be here. Now, if we draw a line connecting these 3 points, and make sure that this line extends from one end of the grid to the other end of the grid. So it's going to be here, and it's going to be here. And if we check our answer, there it is. That is the straight line for the equation y equals negative 4x plus 2. Now let's do a 3-star example. Here we have a fractional coefficient of x, so we have y is equal to a third times x plus 4. We're going to do this in the same way that we've done the previous example. So we're going to construct a table for y and x, and we're going to have 3 values. And the reason we have 3 values is because if you have 2 values and you make a mistake on one of them, you're not going to know that you've made a mistake. You're just going to connect the 2 points and assume that's your straight line. But if you have 3 values and you make a mistake on one of them, it's going to break the line, and you're going to know that you've made a mistake with one of them. So let's choose our values for x. Since we're going to be multiplying these values by a third, and don't forget, multiplying by a third is the same as dividing by 3. So our values for x are all going to be divided by 3. So we're going to pick multiples of 3, because multiples of 3 divide by 3 to give you a whole number. And let me show you what that looks like. So for our first value, I'm actually going to pick 0, because 0 divided by anything is 0. So it's going to be 0 times a third, or 0 divided by 3, which is 0. And then we have plus 4, which is 4. And now let's pick a multiple of 3. Let's do 3. So 3 times a third, or 3 divided by 3, is 1. And 1 plus 4 is 5, so that works. And now let's pick another multiple of 3. I know that if I pick 6, we're going to have 6 divided by 3, which is 2, and then 2 plus 4 is 6. So it does give us a whole number if we use 6, but it's not available on the grid, so we're going to have to use a different number. I'm going to use minus 3. Minus 3 divided by 3 is negative 1. Negative 1 plus 4 is 3. So here are our paired values. Our first coordinate is going to be 0 and 4. The second one is going to be 3 and 5. And the last one is going to be minus 3 and positive 3. Now, just to make a note here, if you had a fourth times x, so 1 over 4 times x, since your denominator is a 4, you're going to want to pick multiples of 4 to input for your x values. If it was a half, then the denominator is 2. You're going to want to pick multiples of 2 that go into your x values. And that's how it works when you're dealing with a fraction in front of the x. So now let's input our coordinates. So our first one is going to be 0 and 4, which is here. Our next one is going to be 3 and 5, which is here. And our last one is going to be minus 3 for the x and 3 for the y, which is here. So now if we connect these coordinates up from one end of the grid to the other end of the grid, we should get this. And if we check our answer, there it is. This is the line that represents the equation y equals a third of x plus 4. And that's it for the lesson on plotting linear graphs of the form y is equal to mx plus c.